accessed the podcast of OA. Located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will, the podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Hey, fellow Owens, this is Myron Rumsey from the podcast of OA, and you're listening to episode number 221. In this episode, we're going to be reviewing some of the Geoff Johns era's books, specifically Volume 4, issues number 14 through 17. That's the Wanted Hal Jordan arc. And by my side, as always, is my good friend Phil Bova. Phil, my friend, it's been a little while. How are you doing?
It has been a while. Actually, my wife said that to me earlier. She's like, you guys haven't recorded in a bit. And I'm like, no, he texted me earlier in the week. He said, we should record this week. And I'm like, no, we must record this week.
Well, I got sent out of town for a week for work. So I was in Florida for a week and then got sick on the flight home, picked up a bug of some sort and was sick for a week. So for 2 weeks, I was kind of out of commission and not available to do anything. And, we talked about, well, what do we do next? And we said, well, let's go back and revisit the John's run and pick up where we left off since we don't have any new books to talk about. And after the events of today, which we'll share about more information about near the end of the episode, I'm flying high right now. I don't know about you.
Oh, I'm ecstatic. It's going to be a good time. And it's going to be illuminating. Let's put it that way, in a very green way.
So
and you can take that in a literal sense. You can take that in any sense you want.
That's right.
Illuminating.
That's right. So for those that are listening to us right now, I hope you stick around till the end of the episode because we're going to talk about the next episode. And I think it's some exciting stuff. But before we get into everything we've got to talk about, we've got a little bit of Green Lantern news. Not a whole lot of news, but one sad thing. Joe Giella, who was one of the original artists on Green Lantern back from the Silver Age, passed away on March 21st. He was aged 94. He was quite a neat guy. I got to meet him in 2019 at Terrificon. And I was wearing, I don't know if you ever saw, Phil, the Green Lantern baseball jersey they did years and years ago. I have one of those. So I was wearing that at the show. And he pointed to the Green Lantern logo and he goes, I created that. I was like, really? So apparently when they were working on the book, they didn't have a logo for Green Lantern designed, and Joe Giella was the one that came up with the design. If Joe was being honest, I'm presuming he is because he was quite a nice guy. But quite a loss, and it's awful to think of all the people we have lost in the last year or so from the comics industry.
It's a shame. I mean, and it's just like with talking to Nodell, that one episode we had, and and him talking about a lot of the people that he ran into at those Comic-Cons, and those guys are gone. I mean, he had stories about Stan Lee, and everybody knows Stan Lee, and it's a shame when you when those names drop off, and they left a mark. I mean, we still talk about them to this day, and we still talk about like a lot of back issues and stuff, and where creation ideas come from and everything. So at least we keep them in our thoughts, especially when it comes to Green Lantern stuff.
Very true. Very true. Also, next month being May, we've participated in the JL May efforts that happen in comic book podcasting circles. We've done that a couple times now. And this year, the theme for JL May is The Brave and the Bold, which is the Volume 3 series from, I think, the early 2000s. And you and I are going to be reviewing issue number 21 and 22, which is a team up between Ollie and Hal. And the Lantern cast is going to do, I believe theirs is Green Lantern and the Phantom Stranger, which is issue 19 and 20. So one of our May episodes will be that JL May issue episode. So I'm excited about that. That'll be fun. I've always enjoyed doing those. I think the last big one that we participated in was when we were doing the Blackest Night stuff, and that was a lot of fun.
I had a great time with that. Still one of the greatest. I still think Gunn is gonna lay groundwork for a Blackest Night event.
I hope so. I really do.
That's gonna be my prediction. I don't know. That's my prediction. Whatever.
I'm hoping to. I just would love to see something, even if it's only an animated movie. That's okay too.
Right.
As long as they don't whiz out and go for PG, because the shock value's got to be there.
Yeah, I agree.
And the last piece of news I've got is that with the first issue of the Green Lantern book coming out in the beginning of May, DC Comics is once again going back to the well and releasing power rings for stores. So apparently if your comic shop orders 50 or more copies of the first issue, they can buy a bag of rings that they can give away as promos, which I don't think we've seen that since Blackest Night. Although I think they might have done something a little bit after that, because it seems to me there was another run of rings. But that was always a big thing. And they also have a pre-order guarantee. I guess stores can return books that don't sell, that kind of thing. But
going back to old school, that's how it was before.
Yeah.
That's how it used to be within the comic book industry. I mean, it was always that buyback system, and I think that's what kept a lot of those shops, going, for lack of a better word.
Well, it encourages tourists to take a chance and order more books than they might normally, hoping that the word of mouth or the positive reviews draw people in that maybe weren't planning on buying the book or didn't pre-order it, and it helps shops out because they can take a chance. Right. And if things don't go out, they can return it, and they're not out anything. So I think it's a good thing.
Right. I agree.
All right. Well, that's it for Green Lantern news. We, of course, have a Know Your Core segment, and then we'll be back to talk about Wanted Hal Jordan.
This is Razor, and you are listening to the blog of Oa. You need to keep listening. Otherwise, I will track you down with all of my skill, and you will feel my wrath.
Fellow Owens, welcome back. Welcome to another Know Your Core segment. This week, we have a character who goes by the name of Amnee Pree, Green Lantern of Sector 35, New Earth. Amnee Pree and her husband, Matu Pree, were chosen together to be Green Lanterns on their wedding day. They were expecting their first child soon, and for that reason, were leading the hunt for the Sinestro Corps member, Crib, together with KT-21, Saranac Natu, and Kyle Rayner. Amnee gave birth during the final stages of the battle, and her child was coveted by Crib. With the help of the Star Sapphire, Miri Ryam, Crib was eventually detained. The baby was delivered safely. After the Guardians rewrote the Book of Oa and forbade personal relationships between members, Amnee and Matu resigned from the Corps. Kyle gave them a choice of what would happen to Crib, whether she would go to Oa or with Miri to Zamaron. They decided to side with love, and Crib was handed over to Miri. Kyle and Saranac transported the Prees to their home sector, and KT-21, who had fallen during the battle, back to Oa. Amnee Pree was created by Geoff Johns and Sterling Gates. First appearance, Tales of the Sinestro Corps, Superman Prime, number 1, December 2007. And there you have it, folks. Another member of the Know Your Core segment.
All right, fellow Owens, we're back to talk about the Geoff Johns run, the issues 14 through 17, the Wanted Hal Jordan arc. It was written by Geoff Johns, of course, and drawn by Ivan Rice. So just to set the stage a little bit, this was a time frame where it just took place after Infinite Crisis ended. And there was a storyline about Earth heroes not being able to cross political boundaries. So there's some subtext to that run through this story as well. And this is also after Hal and John had both gone into Chinese airspace pursuing Evil Star, and they violated the treaty and got in some hot water for doing that. And as a result, they kind of fought the Rocket Red team from Russia and the Great 10 from China. They intercepted the two of them, and after the incident, Hal Jordan was sent on a bombing run against terrorist camps in the former Soviet Union. He was flying without his ring, and he and Rocket Man, which is Shane Sellers, and Jillian Caldwell-Perlman were shot down and held in a POW camp for several months. Hal, of course, didn't have his ring, and so they were eventually rescued, but not after being held as POWs for a while. So that's the context of this story. And it opens up with Hal. I want to say Hal's got maybe a little bit of PTSD going on. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, it sounds like it, but it just by his actions.
Yeah. I mean, it starts out with Hal having kind of a dream or a daydream of when he first sees Abin Sur, and Abin Sur smacks him around and tells him he's not worthy of the ring.
Yeah, and then it goes straight into his flashback sequence.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, gotta say, reading those first few pages of that flashback, I can understand why he was feeling the way he felt.
Yeah.
It's pretty harsh treatment.
and really, I think it's a subconscious thing of that he's very hard on himself, because he's like, I should have had my ring with me. If I had taken the ring with me, none of what happened during this time we were captured would happen. And you see how horribly treated Hal was. I mean, he was pummeled on a daily basis. They were trying to get him to give up information, because again, at this time, Hal's part of the Air Force, so this is a military operation, and Rocket Man has a broken leg, and they keep re-breaking the leg, trying to break him down. And who knows what they're doing to Gillian Perlman. And it goes on for a little while. And it's interesting because there's a neat little, and I think it's neat, maybe some people won't, but he basically kind of recalls something that John McCain said about being what courage is. And I thought it was a neat line. In the quote, I'm going to go ahead and read it. It says, "We are taught to understand correctly that courage is not the absence of fear, but the capacity for action despite our fears." And I thought, boy, that encompasses Green Lantern really well.
It is a good quote to pull.
But this whole first issue is a lot of this flashback and its character development for Hal. And I think it was good because a lot of people they approached it from the perspective I did, where I already thought I knew Hal pretty well because I'd been reading for years. Other people, maybe their entry point to Hal was Emerald Twilight and the Kyle Rayner era, so they don't know, why was Hal such a big deal? Right. So this story where Hal's a POW, doesn't have a power ring, has to deal with serious adversity. I mean, his fingers get broken. He basically pries a chain link free, and when Gillian Perlman is really being gone after, and they threaten to, basically they say, when I break her, you will break, and he snaps, and he and Gillian Perlman break themselves out of this Russian gulag. I think it was in Chechnya, with guns, and they break themselves free, and they get Rocket Man and they break free. And then you see Hal breaking up in a cold sweat. So it was all flashback and dream at that point.
It's funny. It says the League wasn't around to look for me. They thought I flew off to space.
yeah, right. And they would, because that's just the nature of being a Green Lantern. But I think it's good character development because you see what kind of person Hal is when he doesn't have the ring. And I think that was really important in resetting this franchise and getting things going. Is for those people who are joining for the first time, they need to understand why Hal got the ring in the first place.
Exactly. It's setting the tone.
Yep. And the neat thing, there's a really neat scene that takes place in the bar afterwards, where the Air Force don't know where these guys are, and they're all sitting around a table drinking beers, and they each have 2 links of chain that represent the chain they had while they were captured that they share. And they're all working through this stressful process at the same time and trying to work through it in their own way. And they feel like the only way they really work through it is to share time with the people who shared the same experience that they did.
Yeah, Cowgirl kind of brushes the whole thing off,
Yeah, it's interesting that she's the one who really seems to have the fastest recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come to find out that she's gone on a mission without Hal and Rocket Man to give them a little payback. And once again, she goes missing. She's been shot down and captured.
And then Hal goes looking for her.
Yep, he parts ways. I mean, at this point, the general's the only one that knows Hal's secret identity. And so Hal goes off, recharges his ring, and takes off. And of course, sets off all the alarms with the other countries who are like, "Oh, here comes Green Lantern again," and that sets the Rocket Reds off to go intercept Hal again, while he's taking it to the Russian guys pretty harshly. There's a neat 2-page spread that has Hal wearing this construct suit that has wings and guns on his arms, and he's just really mopping up the floor with these guys. They actually made an action figure out of that particular pose.
Yeah, he's got the whole bomb strafing run going on.
Yeah, which is really, really cool. It's a neat piece of artwork.
Yeah.
And as he's trying to deal with all this stuff and he's trying to find Cowgirl and can't find her, he basically gets sideswiped, and it's not by the Rocket Reds, it's by the Global Guardians.
Yep, now he's really in trouble.
Yep, and a whole other set of heroes are there. And it's interesting, before they reveal who they are, Hal runs into the same person who said, "I told you when she breaks, so will you." And he kind of recognizes Hal, which adds a nice little layer of drama to the whole thing. But the Global Guardians show up, and it's interesting. While this is going on, and one of the things I found about this arc that was really, to me, kind of ambitious is you have the story that he's interweaving what's going on in the DC universe. And as we go through this, he's setting up 2 more stories at the same time.
I didn't even think about it like that. Yeah.
It's just this very, to me, this shows that Johns had the luxury of some time to plan this out. That he started thinking about, well, when do I introduce this concept and when do I introduce this, so that when people go back and read this thing, they'll see how it just unfolded for itself, which is neat.
And it's kind of funny because when you go back and you do reread it, sometimes you don't see that firsthand run through. You know?
Yeah, exactly. But we see a character who is talking about tracking Green Lantern down. So there's bounty hunters that are trying to get Hal, and one of them is named Hunger Dog, and he's after Hal as well. So Hal's got the Rocket Reds after him, the Global Guardians are already on top of him, and he's got Hunger Dog on his trail too. Now, what we don't know yet is, okay, we get why the Global Guardians are there, and we get why the Rocket Reds are there, but we don't know why Hunger Dog is there yet.
Yes.
But then it gets revealed that it's Amon Sur's son, and he's there because he wants his dad's ring back.
That's a cool spread with him. Ivan Rice did some good art in this.
Oh yeah. And this is just the first issue of the arc. And Amon Sur showed up during the Kyle Rayner run as well. At one point, I think his head was blown off or something, but I think they alluded to that later on. But the second issue picks up, and we're seeing one of the Guardians grabbing Hank Henshaw's skull and doing some interrogating of his own to talk about the 52. Again, tying it back to the greater DC universe. And that's one of the things, as I was reading this, I was like, this is what I miss about the DC universe. The sense that all of these books exist in a, air quote, real universe. And there are events and things that impact all the titles. They don't have to be intrinsically linked together. But there's a
thread.
Yeah, it feels like they're all threads in the same tapestry, right?
I felt the same. That's why I liked reading them back in those times.
Yeah.
Because I always felt like I wasn't missing anything that was taking place in somebody else's book. I might be like, oh, I don't read that book. I might go read that book now that they're talking about it in this book. That sounds kind of interesting. I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. You could probably sell more books that way.
This was an era when I was buying almost the entire line because I felt the same way. I felt so connected to the DCU, which is something I haven't felt in a long time.
I haven't felt it since these times.
No.
And no. I would venture to guess, I'd say for me, I kind of felt like maybe during the Venditti run, I felt like the DCU was kind of changing.
Yeah.
I mean, towards maybe the middle or the end of his run doing it.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. That's about right.
But yay, my boy, Cyborg. He doesn't look so good, though.
We then jump to Hal fighting the Global Guardians again. And Hal mentions the fact that he's violated this Freedom of Power Treaty 7 times now. So, he's tried to explain to the governments of the world that, my jurisdiction supersedes boundaries. It's the entire planet. And they're not really having it. But he's fighting the Global Guardians, and he's doing well here and there. I love the scene where the new Crimson Fox tries to seduce Hal. She has these pheromones that allow her to kind of manipulate and control men, and possibly women too. And just as she's about to kiss Hal throws up a little shield in front, and I thought it was really a good show of willpower. Because I don't think I could have done that.
Not with the Crimson Fox. But he did say that, but she's not Cowgirl.
Yeah. And again, this is the time when Hal and Carol aren't a thing yet. they're still finding their way, and Hal has kind of moved on to Cowgirl. What's interesting, though, is as the Global Guardians are getting close to him, Hal realizes something's going on. Like, he hears a little bit of an echo, and he discovers that there are two telepaths, or some telepaths there, that are the Faceless Hunters, and they are subatomic beings who can change their size. And they're manipulating the Global Guardians, because Hal is trying to figure out why are these guys coming on to me the way they are? I mean, they know me better than this. Because he'd fought alongside of them before. It didn't make sense for them to be this aggressive. So he reveals them for who they are, and they're also on the hunt for Hal, trying to collect the bounty.
Found him on a snowflake.
Yeah, really cool. Scene jumps back to California, and we see Amon Sur there again with Lorag, talking about, where's the body? I'm trying to find the body of my father. That I want to be in the vicinity when we kill Hal Jordan, so I will get the ring, but I also want my dad's body at the same time. And then we get to set up for another plot point. We jump to England, and we see this young couple who are there, and this one young woman, she finds the Star Sapphire, and her name just happens to be Crystal. She finds the Star Sapphire, and this is where we get the first look at the new Star Sapphire outfit. The very risque Star Sapphire outfit, and realizes the Star Sapphire is like, this isn't my host body. I need to find the right one. So again, this is all foreshadowing for what's going to happen.
And you know who the host body is, don't you?
Oh yeah. Well, do we? Because it's looking for Hal's true love.
Oh, okay. Then there you go. You have to throw that little thing in there.
Yes. Is it going to be Cowgirl, or is it going to be Carol? Who's it going to be? But just 2 pages of the issue, just dropping this little nugget for an upcoming story, just to fill in some space. And as Hal is trying to find Cowgirl, we then jump again to Cord with more foreshadowing, as we see the Cordians trying to build a new power battery, a central power battery, which we didn't have before. And these two guys are talking about how, he rejected our kind, Sinestro did, and we should turn our back on him. And there's Arkillo, who we saw previously get a power ring, bites the head off of one of them, and he initiates the launch of Sinestro Corps power battery, or power rings, to go find some lanterns for Arkillo to train.
Man, I miss Cord. They haven't visited Cord in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. Jump back to where we were, and Hal is being taken by the Global Guardians and the people, the guys that are there, and their ship lands, and they're about to basically make Hal a mindless being at this point, and the Rocket Reds show up.
Which is that spread at the end is a cool shot of them.
Oh yeah,
that would be awesome blown up.
Yeah. Very much so. It was definitely really cool. So things are just really, I don't know. They're not looking good.
No, definitely not. Especially when he's got all these people on his tail.
Yeah, definitely. And what I forgot to mention was that the Global Guardians killed all the people in the prison camp. And they do it to frame Hal.
Right, because that's what set up the whole thing, right?
Yeah. They do this, and he's like, wow, this is really dark for these guys. These guys are heroes. Why are they doing this? And it's basically they've set Hal up, and they report it to the United Nations. So now Hal's a criminal again. So the Rocket Reds show up, and they want to hold Hal accountable. There's some fighting back and forth.
A big grizzly bear construct.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful stuff. And then the Justice League shows up to end the issue. He's there, and and Alan Scott's there with the Justice League, and he says, "This is for your own good. You're coming with us."
And that Alan Scott looks cool.
Oh, I know. Well, Ivan Rice, I don't think he could draw anything bad.
No, he really can't. I've always been a big fan of his art, longest time.
So, I mean, the story is just moving at a breakneck pace. And again, we see a little bit more flashback. The Justice League is there. There's some neat dialogue between Diana and Hal. And I have to be honest, I'm a person who still wants to see Hal and Diana have a bit of a fling. But
really, you think so? Huh?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting. I think Hal reminds Diana a lot of Steve Trevor.
No, that would make sense. That would track with her, I guess, if that's her type of, guy.
Yeah, I don't know.
If she has a type.
I don't know if she has a type. But Justice League fights the Rocket Reds. They kind of make short order of it. Some nice banter and dialogue between the two. Hal explains to Alan what's going on. He goes after the person who's got Jillian Perlman while they take on the Rocket Reds. And then what happens in the meantime is back at Edwards Air Force Base, Amon Sur shows up and finds the little, I don't know what to call it, but there's an area at the Air Force Base they have set aside for things that are Green Lantern related. I mean, they refer to it as Green Lantern's extraterrestrial brig, but it's got, the shark is in there and some other beings are in there. There's some Manhunter parts in there, and there's Amon Sur's ship.
What are those? Oh, those are skeletons who just burned, I was going to say.
Yeah, because basically Amon Sur is killing people left and right just to get in there. Yeah. He doesn't have a ring, but he's got a blaster, and he's disintegrating people. Flashback to the Russian wilderness and the frozen tundra. Hal finds Jillian and the guy that's there. Really cool construct of some Army guys or Air Force guys beating the crap out of this guy. He gets Jillian Perlman. He's trying to go get her looked at, and he apologized to her, and that kind of thing. And she recognizes him as Hal, and he apologizes again and he says you don't have to, and so on. And then the Dominators show up. It's like, just when you think everybody's come to the party, here come the Dominators, and they're also out for the bounty on Hal that Amon Sur has set.
Those guys look funny too.
Yeah. I love the Dominators. I don't know if you remember the event that they did, the invasion event. I thought that was cool.
I don't remember that.
It was a whole DC event where the Dominators were coming to Earth and taking over, and they've kind of been minimized in what they are now, but from what they were, but they were cool. He gets shot with tranquilizers, and then Hunger Dog shows up.
Yeah, Guardian scum coming with me. He is kind of cool looking though.
He is cool, and
he looks like somebody who would play, like Michael Rooker would play.
That would be great casting. I could definitely see Michael Rooker as Hunger Dog.
I don't know how they would write in a Hunger Dog character.
Yeah, I don't know, but Hunger Dog beats the Dominators to Hal, and he takes Hal to Amon Sur back in the desert, and says he's killed Jillian Perlman. Excuse me. And that leads us into the last issue of this story. I mean, just the whole thing flies. And
it does move pretty quick.
Yeah.
The readings out. But I mean, I remember when going through Johns' run and everything was like, I always felt like whenever I was reading each book, it's not that I was done with it fast, but it felt like it was like it moved, and the narrative was kind of like just flowed really, really, really well.
The pacing was great.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's lots of changes of scenery, which I don't want to say it slows the book down because it doesn't feel like it, because when it's a change of scenery, when it's deviating from the main story, it's only a page or two. But, he's setting up the Sinestro Corps. He's setting up the Return of the Star Sapphires and tying this back into what's going on at the DC universe at large, all at the same time, which I think is great. I mean, this is one of the reasons why this run is so well loved.
More so with what's going to happen in the next couple of pages.
Yeah. And we go back and we see the Justice League are proving that the Global Guardians were really brainwashed or being mind controlled, and then one of the favorite scenes for people is Sinestro Corps Reign comes to Earth and chooses Batman.
Man, people were so hot over that back then. I remember it. And then I remember thinking to myself, God. I mean, Batman does everything. He does. Jeez.
But the ring rejects him because it detects traces of a Green Lantern ring. Because if you recall, Hal at one point lets Batman try on his ring.
That's right. That's right.
So because he wore a power ring, he can't wear the Sinestro ring. And it leaves him. And Batman's like, what the heck just happened?
What the hell was that?
We go back to the desert, and Amon Sur is really he's unloading all of his angst of not having a father, and he's taking all of his anger and frustration about what happened and projecting it onto Hal. So it's Hal's fault for everything, and he's used the Manhunter head to suck all the power out of Hal's ring, and it's basically the two of them together. Hal starts to push buttons of Amon Sur, and Amon Sur. You kind of feel sorry for Amon Sur, to be honest, when you hear his story, but he couldn't get over it.
Right.
And he does talk about his head getting blown off when he met with Kyle Rayner. He tried to get the ring from Kyle Rayner and couldn't get it from him. It rejected him. He forces Hal to show him where Amon Sur is buried. They uncover Amon Sur's corpse. Pretty, gruesome scene for sure.
I'm surprised it's still there, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, but again, I guess we don't have a real good sense of how long it's been. Comic book time versus our time, and the universe has been reset so many times between Showcase 22 and now. It's really hard to get an idea of how many years it's been. Like that goalpost keeps getting moved, right?
Right. That's true. That's a good point.
Like I said, Hal keeps poking at Amon Sur, and Amon Sur's about to blast him, and Hunger Dog out of the blue saves Hal. And that's when we find out that Hunger Dog's actually an undercover John Stewart.
Incognito.
Yeah. And it's funny. One of the criticisms of the Johns run was that it was originally kind of sold that Green Lantern was going to be about Hal and John as sector partners. And the Green Lantern Corps book was going to be Kyle and Guy. And Johns really didn't give a lot of page time to John Stewart. So I think a lot of fans who loved the John Stewart character felt a little let down. And I totally get it. I mean, he doesn't show up a lot. And I don't know whether that was a Johns decision. Was it an editorial decision? Who knows at this point?
Sure. But again, it's another misuse of character. It seems to happen a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's why they use John a lot more in the Justice League around that time period.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But as Hal's fighting Amon Sur, and he's kind of going mano-a-mano, the Sinestro Corps ring shows up, and it goes on Amon Sur. And so Amon Sur becomes the Yellow Lantern of Sector 2814.
That one scene, that one shot with him, it looks like he's got that circle on his chest.
Yeah.
Really, it looks like he's got the old Sinestro uniform on.
Yeah, it's interesting art style wise that the Sinestro Corps uniforms look very much like Sinestro's original outfit, the black and the blue. And there's not really a logo there. And, I don't remember now when it changed or how it changed. That as we reread these issues, I'm looking forward to finding that out because I don't remember.
Yeah, I'd have to check that too.
But they end up having a fight. They don't understand what's going on with all of this. And Amon Sur gets summoned for training, disappears, and leaves them behind. And then they're like, wow, what the heck is this all about? Because again, this is the first time Hal and John are seeing the Sinestro Corps. So, interesting stuff. And John's first thing is, hey, we need to let Salak know what's going on. Hal, in the meantime, is realizing, I didn't do right by Amon Sur. I didn't give him a proper burial. Sure, at the time when I got the ring, I didn't feel like I had any other choice, but in the years since, I could have taken Amon Sur's body home and met his widow or any family he had and made amends with them and basically helped them grieve, because how did they ever get told? Eventually, according to the flashback, some Green Lanterns went to Angara and told them what happened, but Hal never did.
Huh. What do you think that the difference is with those gravestones on that one panel with the green and the red light? Is that a red or a yellow?
Where the lights flying over? Yeah, it was interesting because it looks like there's a green light on one side of the tombstone, and then it turns into almost like a yellow light on the other side. And I don't know what that signifies.
Could be nothing. We'll never know.
Nope. And then we go back to Edward's Air Force Base. The Justice League is patching up all the holes and things left behind from the damage from Amon Sur. And Hal's basically, he has that conversation with Jillian about, I should have been here. A lot of good men and women got hurt. And, I did wrong. And she's kind of like, I don't know exactly what she's seeing at, but she goes, hey, don't you think we have something else to jaw about? And says Hal, and Hal's looking out a window or something, and he's not connected. So that scene was the only scene I think in the whole story that left me a little like, I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. How do you interpret it?
He's distracted because of what's coming in the next panel. I would assume that whatever he's talking about with Cowgirl there, he gets a sense of what's coming because he's looking out the window. Looks like he's looking out the window, right?
Yeah, it does. And I don't know whether he sees what's coming or if because there's a scene where earlier when he finds Jillian, where he leans down and he looks like he's about to kiss her. So I don't know if that's what she wants to talk about. Like, is there something going on between us, or how does she perceive their relationship? I don't know. I mean, it's definitely foreshadowing as we get to the final panel, which shows Crystal in the Star Sapphire outfit landing 5 miles outside of Ferris Aircraft.
Mm-hmm. And he's coming.
Yep. And which body does my chosen mate desire? I think I know.
Cowgirl.
Yeah, it leaves it all up in the air, doesn't it? And
it does.
It was
which, by the way, that next issue is really great. Tales of the Sinestro Corps. Oh
yeah. I thought that was a neat arc. I thought it had lots of good character development, certainly a lot of action, a lot of twists and turns, a couple of gotcha moments where you didn't really see things coming. So it was surprising. It kept you on your toes.
Like most his run did, and he did it, and he did it in not many pages either. You're only talking 20, 21 pages, right?
Yeah.
That's not a lot of text to tell a lot of stories. I mean, most of your comic books now are up to about 30 pages.
You're right.
Aren't they? Yeah.
You're right. I just felt that this story was one of the stronger ones of his early run in this. I think in the very beginning there was a lot of little one-offs and some little things. Again, just things that still pay off. I mean, this is all building. I mean, we're establishing the emotional spectrum with the things we're already familiar with.
I know. And it just gives you that sense of what's coming because it's so exciting. And back then, you had no clue. You know what I mean? I remember reading it and having no clue what was going to happen.
Yeah. No,
and it's good stuff.
No clue about what was coming. Nothing, there was nothing to give us any idea of what we were about to get as these issues continue to unfold.
Oh.
But how Johns was able to plant all these seeds as he's telling stories which are engaging and yet still, as I said before, tie back to the DC universe as a whole. This arc is a perfect example of why the Geoff Johns run is really something that people point to when they talk about great Green Lantern runs.
Totally agree. Have you read his new JSA stuff?
I have not picked it up yet.
Okay, that was good. I haven't tried it yet either.
Yeah, I haven't. When I went to, I think I was telling you off mic a little bit ago, I went to my comic shop for the first time in a month and a half, and they didn't have any books for me, and I didn't go digging. I'll probably pick it up and trade or read it at some point that way.
Yeah, I was thinking about getting it. I'd like to check it out just because I want to read about Alan Scott. So
I've started having a different mentality about how I buy my comics. If it's a story I just want to read and I'm not worried about collecting it, I'm buying it in trade, I think.
That's what I do.
But if it's an issue, like if it's Green Lantern, like I'm going to buy the Jeremy Adams run in individual floppies, and then I'll still buy it in collected edition because I like to have that on my bookshelf. If I'm going to go back and review something, I'd much rather pull a book off my shelf than try to find a floppy.
Right. I totally agree. Usually I focus on, usually variant. I like the variant covers that they produce. So I usually try to get some of those. And then like, a lot of it is cover. If I really, really like a cover, I'll get it, you know. I got it. It's like when I collected all the Cyborg Superman covers. I got them all. Every cover he's ever been on.
That's
in any
cool.
DC book.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so it's just everybody collects different kinds of stuff, you know, and everybody's unique with their collections. And it's all about personal preference. But I will say this, trades look awesome on shelves.
Yes, they do. They
I
do.
mean, they just do. I mean, they just look awesome. Especially when you get the big omnibus. It just looks awesome.
The omnibuses and the, what's the other format? Oh, gosh. I don't remember what they're called now, but they're like oversized books. They're not omnibuses, but they're...
You're talking about the one like the Sinestro one, the Sinestro Corps War one?
Yeah, there's a Sinestro Corps War one. There's a Rebirth one. There's... Oh, gosh. There's a Blackest Night one.
You got the box though, the Blackest Night box, right?
I have that too. Yeah, I have multiple versions of Sinestro Corps and Blackest Night.
I'm still waiting for that big Blackest Night box to show up on my doorstep, care of Myron Rumsey sending it to me.
Absolute editions. Absolute editions.
Absolute edition, yeah. I
Those,
still got that on my wish list. I don't think my family's ever going to get those for me.
I love them in that way. I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to do a comparison of what's the best way to read Blackest Night. Is it the floppies? Is it the collected trades? Is it the way they were published, the individual trades? Is it the omnibus, the Geoff Johns omnibus? Is it the Blackest Night Absolute Edition? Or is it the box set? Which,
I mean, so when I first initially read it, I did. God, it was so long ago. I remember hearing about it, and I remember getting all the digital copies of all these comic books because it was I think it was like one of the first generations of iPad that came out. That's how long ago it was. And Comic Zeal, I got that Comic Zeal app, and I remember uploading all the books to my iPad, and there were 76 books, and I had a number of 1 through 76, and that was the reading order I was told that they went in. Now, that was all supplemental issues, right? So it was DC-wide event. So I'd have like Teen Titans in there, the Blackest Night tie-in, all the tie-ins were in there. Now and it started with that Solomon Grundy issue. I think it was when it first started. That was what they had. That was what I read. They had an issue of when the Blackest Night event started.
The biggest problem with any of the collected versions, I have a spreadsheet I've been working on. The biggest problem with all of the collected editions is there are 2 issues that none of them have in it. There are 2 prelude to Blackest Night issues, Solomon Grundy number 7 and Action Comics number 890, and none of the collected editions have those 2 books included.
And that doesn't make any sense because it alludes to that's what started it. I mean, that the allusion's there, so that's why it was on that list when I looked it up back then.
Yeah,
you know.
But yeah, I've been working. This is so stupid. I've spent so much time doing this. I've been building a spreadsheet of the omnibus versus the absolute versus the box set. And how much do they cost? What issues are included in each? And what makes the best reading experience? It's I'm going to make a YouTube video, honest to gosh. By the time I do it, probably none of these collected editions will be available anymore. Who knows?
But do you think it has to do with, I guess maybe the context of what you're reading, right? So like an omnibus might be better for like certain stories maybe, and then maybe an ultimate or like the absolute edition would be better for like the inclusion of, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you this. The problem I've seen is that only one collects the stories in their printed order. The rest do not.
So which one is that?
The omnibus, the Blackest Night omnibus.
And that's in working order of
Yes.
the events and how they transpired.
Correct. The Absolute only has Blackest Night, the main story. It doesn't have any of the tie-ins. The box set has all the tie-ins, but the way it's collected, you'd have to go from book to book.
Right. I remember you saying that when you got it.
Yeah. And the Geoff Johns omnibus doesn't have all the crossovers. They only have the main stuff that Johns wrote. So it doesn't have any other stuff either. So in terms of content, the box set and the omnibus are kind of tied head and head. They have the exact same stuff. The box set, as beautiful as the presentation is, it doesn't have it in the right order to read it.
Right. Which would make sense.
I guess
that would track with an omnibus, though. That would make sense why it would be in collected order like that.
So everybody who just listened to that when I make the YouTube video, act surprised. But anyway, we've got some listener feedback to talk about. So let's take a quick break, because I know I need to wet my whistle. And we'll come back and we'll talk about your listener feedback.
This is Salak, Green Lantern of Sector 1418, and you are receiving the podcast of Oa.
The podcast of Oa.
Greetings, Green Lanterns. Our first message is from Matt, who has a comment about the interview with Spencer Nodell. Commencing transmission in 3, 2, 1.
Hi Phil and Myron, this is Matt from England again. Just wanted to say how much I enjoyed your interview with Mr. Nodell. It's a little sad to think about all of the history that's been lost over the last year or so, and hearing from Martin's son and him clarifying the origins of Alan Scott's creation is something that bears repeating. It also does sound like Bob Kane was really the narcissist he seemed to be. Keep up the great work, fellas.
Hey, Matt. It's good to hear from you. Hope everything's going well over in England. I'm glad you enjoyed the Nodell interview. It was really nice. I wish we could have gotten to talk to him when he was at the con, but actually it was a little bit better because we got more of an intimate experience with him when Myron and I got to talk to him over the phone. Just a really, really great guy. I mean, he's just nice. Loves telling stories. I'm glad everybody enjoyed it. I mean, and that's the main thing about him and his family. It's not so much about recognition. It's just so much about, they want to convey what their family has done for the Green Lantern community, and they want more people to know how much Martin Nodell contributed to the Green Lantern mythos. So kudos to you, Matt. I'm glad you liked it, and hope to hear from you again.
I agree. Talking to Spencer Nodell was a real treat, and I'm glad we got to capture some things in audio. One of the things that has always bugged me was Green Lantern was co-created by Bill Finger, and I was sure beforehand that wasn't the case, and I was like, I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to pose it that way because I wanted somebody to address it who could speak with some authority. So, but I enjoyed that conversation with Spencer, and some of the interesting anecdotes about Bob Kane I thought were kind of funny too.
He was good, and he's just real comical, just real down to earth.
Yeah, and I co-signed about all the history that we're losing. You and I kind of talked about it at the beginning of the show. That Joe Giella's passed, Neil Adams is gone. We keep losing people, and that history goes away. It's depressing. I guess it's it's just part of life, but it's sad to see the people that are lost whose stories don't get told, or they're told inaccurately.
Right. Or somebody else takes credit for it.
Yes.
And that's the main thing that I've always been interested in with the comic book universe. It's like there's so much focus lately on creators, and as well there should be. They're IPs, and they own the rights to them. So I don't blame the Nodell family for doing what they need to do to make the word of mouth spread, and I hope they accomplish everything they need to.
I really think that every comic book character that's used in some form of media, there should be creator credits, regardless
Mm-hmm.
of, you know, I mean, we see the Siegel and Schuster family and Bob Kane and Bill Finger getting theirs. Sometimes you'll see the creator of Wonder Woman, William, I can't pronounce his name.
Marston.
Thank you.
William Marston.
You'll see his name there. I just think, and the companies have gotten better about it, but I really feel like it should be done regardless in my head.
Well, that's why you see a lot of these writers and creators jumping off the big, DC and Marvel. They want their own content, and if they go to an independent publisher, they can still own their own content, their own IP. So
right,
and sometimes that's important to these guys, and I get it. I don't blame them at all.
Yeah, I mean, so think about The Walking Dead.
Yeah, I mean, that's just there's so much money that can be had from that, and not only that, it's all about your copyright. It's all about your creation. Right. You own the intellectual property.
I mean, not every one of these books is going to be The Walking Dead, but you just never know. No. And to be able to guarantee you get your piece of the pie should it take off, I think is important for these people.
Yep, totally agree. So kudos to the family, and I hope they do well.
Yes. Yep. And Matt, thank you for the feedback. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you stick around and you're in it for the long haul. All right, Power Ring, why don't you go ahead and give us the next message?
The last message is from Ken, who also has a comment about the last episode. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, Myron and Phil. Thank you for answering my questions in the last episode, and thank you for a great interview. It was very enlightening to see how Green Lantern was created and who Martin Odell was. As a very late New Year's resolution, I will try not to mention the Thorn Run anymore. I'm honestly tired of talking about the series too. The one shot was just so horrible and made me rethink DC's push for Jon Stewart content. Since you were unable to answer this question in the last episode, I am resending it here. If you had to form a team of all the main Human Lanterns but they had to be from different universes/Earths, who would you choose? For story purposes, I wouldn't mind seeing our Hal meeting Justice Lords John, Earth 16 Kyle, Superhero Girls Jess, Earth 3 Simon, Kingdom Come Jade, and New 52 Earth 2 Alan. I would reveal that Hippie Lantern is a version of Guy and have him join the team too. I know Morrison did their multiverse core, which I personally found disappointing, but I wanted to focus on alternate versions of our Human Lanterns only. Thank you for the great show as always.
Hello, Ken. Welcome back. Hey, so, well, the one thing I do want to start off with is he who shall not be named on the podcast henceforth forward. That's by Myron degree. Just so you know, he who cannot be named will only be named if it's a reference point or for a specific purpose. Moving on to the other part of your question. Let's talk about your lanterns. You're talking about lanterns from the other. Make sure I get this right.
Yeah, if you could make a team of the main Human Lanterns from different universes.
Ken, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one. I really want to think this one through, and I don't want it to overlap with my other choices when me and Myron did the multiverse ones. So I'm gonna think about it, and I'm gonna get back to you. And maybe if I'll even one better you. If Myron shares your email address with me, I'll send it to you. So, but what about you, Myron? Who'd you pick?
Well, I cheated. Thanks for throwing me under the bus. I went back to my list for the other episode because we did our best, our favorite Green Lanterns of the multiverse. So I plucked some of those from there. I love Ken's idea that the hippie Green Lantern, the Magic Lantern of Earth 47, is actually a multiverse version of Guy Gardner. I think that is so great. And I would pick that version of Guy Gardner as well, because I think that is just such a cool idea to think of Guy Gardner as a stoner. I love it. I would go with the Alan Scott from Kingdom Come. For Hal, I would go with Earth 21, the New Frontier universe. And like you, I would go with the Earth 16 version of Kyle. And for Jon Stewart, I would go for the Earth 1 version of Jon Stewart from the Earth 1 books. The other Earth Lanterns, I don't care. I just
Quintella?
No.
What's your name?
Kelly Quintella? No, don't care. Jill Mullane? Don't care. Simon Baz? Really don't care. Jessica Cruz? Don't care. So
I will double down with him on his Kingdom Come Jade. I like that.
Yeah, that'd be a good choice. I felt bad about doing Kingdom Come Alan Scott and Kingdom Come Jade, so I left him out. I left her out. Excuse me.
That's fair.
But if I were going to pick a version of Jade, it would be that version of Jade.
That'd be cool to see her back at some point.
Yeah. I it seems to me that she's back, isn't she? I don't know. I don't know.
Is she back?
Yeah.
Somebody knows she's back.
Somebody knows, but not us.
Not us.
All right. Well, Power Ring, why don't you tell how people can be a part of the show, and then we'll come back and wrap things up.
You can become a part of the show by leaving a message up to 1 minute long on our voicemail line. Call us at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can also email us at podcast@blogofoa.com. We'd love to hear from you.
What up, dweebs? This is Guy Gardner. You're listening to the podcast of OA.
All right, Owens. Welcome back. Another great episode. Some good Geoff Johns stuff. Good news stuff coming on the horizon. Got a lot of Green Lantern stuff. I guarantee you at some point in the future, maybe 6 months. We'll go 4 to 6 months. I think that we're going to see more stuff with Green Lantern happening. But I know that Myron is egging to get. I know Myron's egging to get something off his chest. So I'm gonna let him. I'm gonna let him have the spotlight here because this is good stuff that's coming.
Well, yeah, I'm really excited. We've got 2 episodes coming up in May. One is going to be the Jail May, but the other is I've been in contact with DC Comics, and they are arranging an interview for you and I with both Jeremy Adams and Philip Kennedy Johnson in one interview. So I am really looking forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Exciting stuff.
Yes,
it's going to be a good conversation.
Yep, it's going to be a great conversation. And one of the things that DC Comics did, it's funny, for the last few years, DC Comics has not been very approachable. But this kind of happened out of the blue. It all happened tonight. I mean, you and I were texting back and forth. I think I had about 6 or 7 emails back and forth and DMs on Twitter between myself and somebody at DC Comics PR department and Jeremy Adams, going back and forth and sharing some information. And they want us to talk to both of these guys. It was funny because I was looking just to interview Jeremy because Jeremy wrote some of the Green Lantern animated series. He follows me on Twitter. We've interacted before. I thought it'd be nice for us to be able to just have a chat in person for once. And then they said, well, hey, we'd like to up the ante. How would you like to add Philip Kennedy Johnson to the conversation? I'm like, sure, sign me up, right? But the other thing that happened was they sent us the first issue of the new run, and can't talk about it a whole lot. But if you haven't been able to sense my enthusiasm for Green Lantern in this episode, I'm very happy with what I've seen and read so far.
Well, there's some previews out there that I've seen on Twitter. So
yep,
I think like couple pages right here and there. I mean, just trust those pages to know that what's being done about this is being done right.
Yeah,
let's put it that way.
If there's any hesitancy, if you value our opinions at all, we'll tell you that any concerns are not warranted. Things look like they're going to be really, really good. I'm very excited. I think in this first issue, Jeremy Adams has shown that he knows Hal's voice, and it comes across very well. It has all of the humor and charm and adventure that we would expect. And it's a little early to say too much about the Philip Kennedy Johnson part because it's not that many pages, because there's a backup in this issue. But what I read, I think those of us who miss the Architect John will be happy. But I think those that come at it from the Justice League cartoon, if that's their entry point, I think they'll be happy too. And it does not ignore what's come before. And I think that's about as much as I'm willing to say without getting myself into trouble. But, and I'll tell you the other thing, the art is fantastic.
It's going to be good stuff. And usually, like, with me, I usually like to give it to like 3 or 4 issues. Usually you can glean some. Usually you can gauge how good a run's going to be by, I would say, at minimum 3 issues, right? If it's not happening by 4, it's not happening.
Right.
If you can't feel it by 5, then you might as well just put it down because you ain't gonna feel it. So, and that's usually how I work and how I operate. But it's very rare when I open a book and it grabs my attention right away. And this one did that, and I wasn't ready for it. I was like, okay, you and I were going back and forth, and I didn't know how I was going to go into this. Like, coming off of the last year and a half, it's just kind of like I feel dried out from it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So when I went into it, I was like, I didn't have any expectations. Opened it up, and the opening salvo, I was like, okay, this is going to get me excited. And now I haven't even made my way all the way through it yet, so that's saying a lot. But I'm going to read it tonight. But at the same time, I think both these guys know what's at stake with these characters, and I don't think it's a joke anymore with DC because they know. I mean, if you're doing a series based off the Green Lantern characters, coincidentally, your property should be doing just as equally well in the publishing side, and because one should. I'm not saying one will drive the other, but more often than not, one can drive the other. Revenues go up. And I think these guys are going to do the characters right. So even with Jon Stewart, and I'm not even a Jon Stewart fan.
Yeah. Yeah. All I can say is I DM'd Jeremy Adams earlier tonight after I got done reading it. And what I said to him is, I haven't had a Green Lantern comic that has made me smile in about 2 years. And after reading this issue, all I can do is smile. I'm obviously giddy from reading the first issue. And I know some of that's like, I always, when somebody comes out of a movie theater and says how much they loved a movie, I always kind of take that with a grain of salt because it's like you're writing that euphoria of just walking out of the theater. I try to temper that when I'm reading something, but I don't know. I read it. I was like, oh my gosh, this captures everything I want in a Green Lantern comic book. And so I'm very excited by it. Looking forward to seeing the actual print copy and getting it in my hands. But if you're on the fence, give it a shot. Don't be too concerned. I think, again, not everything is revealed. There's some mysteries here. There's things we don't know yet and how certain things have transpired, how much time has passed since the last run, that kind of thing. But I have every amount of faith possible that we're going to get those answers, or at least the answers that matter. Because we don't necessarily need answers to every question or to know exactly what happened between here and there. We just need to know what's pertinent to the story they're telling. And I am very much impressed with what I saw this issue, and the feeling that while both stories are separate stories, clearly they exist at the same window of time. But let's leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that, and then we'll have a conversation with them.
Yep, looking forward to it. So until next time, please keep your power ring charged, take good care of each other, and make every day your brightest day. The Podcast of Oa is the official podcast of the blog of Oa and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can send your emails to podcast@blogofoa.com. You can also find the Blog of Oa and the Podcast of Oa on Twitter and Facebook. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The blog of OA and the podcast of OA are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted property.